The forest breathes with secrets tonight, ancient and alive in ways that daylight never reveals. Thornwood stretches endlessly in every direction, a cathedral of towering pines and twisted oaks, whose branches weave shadows so thick they swallow starlight whole. The air tastes of moss and earth and something wilder, something that makes smart travelers clutch their silver talismans and quicken their pace toward civilization's edge. But Alara has never been smart in the ways others measure intelligence. She has never learned the art of fear when perhaps she should have. The moon hangs fat and luminous above the canopy, painting everything in shades of pearl and pewter, and she moves through the undergrowth with practiced silence, a woven basket heavy with fresh meat slung over one shoulder. Her boots make no sound on the carpet of pine needles. Her breath mists in the October cold, but she doesn't shiver. This is her sanctuary, her kingdom of shadows and howls, and she walks through it like a queen through her throne room, unafraid and utterly alone except for the eyes that watch from the darkness with feral intelligence. She reaches the clearing she has claimed as her own over 3 years of nightly pilgrimages, a circular space where moonlight pools like liquid silver, and the trees form a perfect ring, as though planted by deliberate hands centuries ago. The grass here grows softer than elsewhere, thick and emerald even this late in autumn. Ancient stones protrude from the earth in patterns that suggest purpose, remnants of something older than memory. Alara sets her basket down and kneels, her dark hair falling forward over her shoulders in waves that catch the light. She wears simple clothing, practical things meant for survival rather than beauty. But there is something ethereal about her nonetheless. Her skin seems to glow faintly in the darkness, and her eyes, those strange eyes that got her labeled cursed and driven from her village before she turned 15, reflect the moonlight with an almost metallic sheen. Silver eyes in a human face. Wrong, they called them. Witchcraft, they whispered, but the wolves have never cared about human superstitions. She begins to sing, a melody without words that rises from somewhere deep in her chest, vibrating through the clearing like a summoning. It is not a song any human could teach because no human knows it. The tune came to her in dreams, the same prophetic nightmares that have haunted her since childhood, visions of running through forests with 4 legs instead of 2, of tasting blood and moonlight, of belonging to something vast and incomprehensible. The first wolf emerges from the tree line within moments, a massive gray alpha male she has named Ghost for his ability to materialize from nowhere. His eyes are gold and ancient, watching her with recognition that goes beyond animal instinct. He approaches without hesitation, lowering his great head so she can scratch behind his ears. 2 more follow, then 5, then a dozen. They come from every direction, wolves that should be competitors, that should tear each other apart for territory. But they gather around her in peaceful congregation. She feeds them one by one, placing strips of venison directly into their jaws with bare hands that should terrify any sane person, and they take the offering with gentleness that contradicts their nature. If you are enjoying this story so far, please take a moment to like this video, and let me know in the comments what you think will happen next. Your support means everything, and helps me continue creating these immersive supernatural tales. Now let us continue into the world of Alara and the Alpha King, who is about to change her entire existence. Ghost suddenly goes rigid, his hackles rising as a low growl rumbles from his chest. The other wolves respond instantly, forming a defensive semicircle around Alara with their bodies. She feels it too, that electric charge in the air that precedes something powerful, something that makes her skin prickle and her pulse kick into high gear. The temperature drops 10 degrees in seconds. Her breath comes faster, visible in thick clouds. Someone is coming. Someone whose very presence bends reality around them like gravity bends light. She rises slowly to her feet, her hand instinctively going to the hunting knife sheathed at her belt. Though what good steel would do against true supernatural threat she cannot guess. The tree, line opposite her position, erupts with movement, and then he is there, stepping into the clearing with the confident stride of someone who has never known genuine fear, someone who is the nightmare that makes other nightmares flee. Cale Thornridge stands easily over 6.5 feet tall, broad-shouldered and carved from muscle that speaks of both violence and restraint. His hair is black as pitch, falling to his shoulders in waves that somehow look deliberately untamed. His face is all sharp, angles and predatory beauty, high cheekbones and a jaw that could cut glass. But it is his eyes that steal her breath. They glow amber in the darkness, not reflecting light, but generating it, burning with an inner fire that marks him as other, as alpha, as something far more dangerous than the wolves surrounding her. He wears black clothing that probably costs more than most people earn in a year, tailored perfectly to his frame but practical enough for movement. Power radiates from him in waves, so tangible she can almost see them distorting the air. The wolves between them whine uncertainly, caught between their loyalty to her and their instinctive submission to the apex predator who has just entered their space. His lips curve into something that might be a smile if smiles could carry that much threat. When he speaks, his voice is deep and textured like smoke over gravel, the kind of voice that could command armies or seduce angels into falling. You should not be here, little human. These woods belong to my people, and feeding wild animals is dangerous for someone so fragile. He takes a step closer, and the movement is liquid grace, utterly inhuman. The wolves part for him despite themselves, their bodies lowering in automatic submission even as they clearly want to protect her. She sees Ghost struggle against the compulsion, fighting his own biology. Or perhaps you are not feeding them at all. Perhaps you have come here seeking death, and found the slowest method available. His eyes rake over her with an intensity that feels physical, assessing, measuring, and something else she cannot quite identify. Something that makes heat bloom low in her stomach despite the fear trying to claw its way up her throat. Alara lifts her chin, meeting those burning amber eyes with her own strange silver gaze, refusing to look away even though every survival instinct screams at her to run. I could ask you the same question, she says, and her voice comes out steadier than she feels. What brings the great Alpha King into the depths of Thornwood so far from his castle? Surely you have better things to do than harass women feeding hungry animals. She sees surprise flicker across his face, quickly masked, so he did not expect her to know who he is. Did not expect her to stand her ground. Good. Let him be off balance for once. These wolves are not wild in the way you think. They know me, and I know them. We have an understanding that requires no words. She reaches down without, breaking eye contact, and places her hand on Ghost's head. The massive wolf leans into her touch, a rumbling sound of contentment vibrating through his chest. See? No danger here except perhaps the danger you bring with you, Alpha King. Something shifts in Kale's expression, a crack in the mask of predatory indifference. He moves closer with that same fluid grace, circling her slowly like a shark in deep water, and she forces herself to remain still, to not track his movement even though losing. Sight of him makes her skin crawl with vulnerability. How do you know who I am, little witch? His voice drops lower, more intimate somehow despite the threat woven through it. What game are you playing in my territory and who sent you here? He completes his circle, coming to stand directly in front of her again, close enough now that she can feel the heat radiating from his body. Smell the scent of winter wind and dark spices that clings to him. His hand rises, and she thinks for a moment he might touch her, but instead his fingers hover near her face, tracing the air around her without making contact. You smell human, but your eyes tell a different story. Silver eyes are not natural, not in any species I know. What are you? I am exactly what I appear to be, she responds, though her heart hammers against her ribs so hard she is certain he can hear it. A woman who prefers the company of wolves to the company of humans, because wolves at least are honest about their nature. They do, not pretend to be civilized while harboring cruelty in their hearts. As for who sent me, no one sends me anywhere. I go where I choose, and I choose to be here. She finally allows herself to step back, creating distance between them that feels necessary for her ability to think clearly. His proximity does something to her, makes her blood sing in her veins and her skin feel too tight. Your reputation precedes you, Alpha King. Everyone within 100 miles knows your name and fears it. But I have learned that fear is only useful when it keeps you alive, and I have been coming here for 3 years without incident until tonight. So perhaps the question is not what I am, but what you want with me. Kale studies her with an intensity that feels like being examined under glass, categorized and labeled for future reference. Then, unexpectedly, he laughs. The sound is rich and genuine, transforming his face from threatening to devastating in its beauty. Bold words from someone who stands, unarmed before a predator who could tear her throat out before she finished screaming. I like that. Stupidity often masquerades as bravery, but there is a difference in the quality of recklessness. You have intelligence behind those strange eyes, which makes your presence here even more curious. He crosses his arms over his broad chest, head tilting slightly. There have been reports, you see, hunters returning from Thornwood with tales of a witch who commands wolves, who sings to the moon and makes wild beasts kneel. Some say you are a demon. Others claim you are a spirit of the forest given flesh. My counsel demanded I investigate before panic spreads further. So here I am, expecting to find charlatanry or dark magic, and instead I find a woman with silver eyes feeding venison to my wolves like they are pets. They are not your wolves. Ilara shoots back before she can stop herself. They belong to no one but themselves. I merely offer friendship, and they choose whether to accept it. There is no magic involved, no demon blood or forest spirits, just understanding and respect. Things perhaps your kind have forgotten in favor of domination and control. She knows she is pushing, knows that provoking an alpha werewolf is monumentally stupid. But something about him makes her reckless. Maybe it is the way he looks at her, like she is a puzzle he wants to solve. Maybe it is the strange pull she feels toward him, magnetic and inexplicable, making her want to either run as far as possible or close the distance between them entirely. Your kind, Cale repeats softly, and there is something dangerous in his tone now. Tell me, little human, what exactly do you think you know about my kind? Have you studied us from afar? Read your human folklore filled with silver bullets and full moon transformations. We are not the monsters your bedtime stories portray. We are survivors in a world that fears what it cannot control. We built civilization when humans still cowered in caves. We established laws and hierarchies that have maintained peace for centuries. So do not stand there with judgment in your silver eyes and presume to lecture me about what my kind has forgotten. He moves faster than should be possible, closing the space between them before she can react, one hand wrapping around her upper arm with a grip that is firm but does not hurt. You have no idea what you are dealing with, girl. Ghost snarls, lunging forward with teeth bared, and Ilara throws up her other hand, in a gesture that halts the wolf mid-attack. Stop, she commands, and the authority in her voice surprises even her. Ghost obeys immediately, dropping back but remaining tense and ready. The other wolves shift restlessly, torn between instinct and loyalty. Kyle's eyes widen fractionally, genuine shock breaking through his controlled exterior. See? Ilara says quietly, looking up at him from far too close. I do not need magic to be heard. I only need to understand that respect is earned, not demanded. Your grip on my arm means nothing, because I am not afraid of pain. I have survived worse than you could imagine. But if you want answers about who and what I am, perhaps you should try asking instead of threatening. We might find that conversation more productive than this dance of dominance you are attempting. For a long moment, Cale simply stares at her, those amber eyes searching her face for something she cannot name. Then, slowly, deliberately, he releases her arm and steps back. His expression shifts into something almost like respect. You are either the bravest human I have ever encountered, or the most foolish, and I cannot yet determine which. Very well, strange woman with silver eyes who commands wolves without magic. I will ask, what is your name? And why do you hide in these woods instead of living among your own people? What drives you to seek companionship with creatures that should terrify you? And most importantly, his voice drops to barely above a whisper. Why? Does your scent make my wolf howl with recognition when I have never seen you before in my life? That last question sends a shiver down her spine that has nothing to do with cold. She wraps her arms around herself, suddenly feeling exposed in ways that have nothing to do with physical vulnerability. My name is Ilara, she begins, and the rest comes tumbling out before she can stop it, before she can remember that trusting anyone, especially supernatural kings with eyes like molten gold, is a mistake she cannot afford. I hide here because I have nowhere else to go. My village cast me out when I turned 15 because of my eyes, because I saw things in dreams that later came true, because I was different in ways they could not explain or accept. They called me cursed, said I would bring misfortune to anyone who showed me kindness. So I left before they decided cursed things should be eliminated rather than merely exiled. I have been alone ever since. And the wolves, she gestures to, the animals surrounding them. They were the first creatures in years who looked at me without fear or hatred. They accepted me as I am. As for your last question, she meets his eyes again and sees something there that steals her breath. Your guess is as good as mine, Alpha King. If you are invested in Alara and Kale's story, please consider subscribing to this channel so you never miss an update. I have so many more supernatural romance tales to share, and your subscriptions help me know that you are enjoying this journey. Let us dive back into their world. Kale runs a hand through his dark hair, a gesture that seems almost frustrated, almost human in its lack of calculated control. This is impossible, he mutters, more to himself than to her. Absolutely impossible. But the bond does not lie. It never lies. He looks at her again, and this time there is something raw in his expression, vulnerable in a way that makes him seem less like an untouchable king and more like a man confronting something he never expected. Alara. He says her name like he is testing how it feels in his mouth. Do you know what the mate bond is? In my world, in the supernatural hierarchy that governs my people, every wolf has a destined mate. A partner chosen not by logic or convenience, but by fate itself, by magic older than recorded history. When you meet that person, the bond manifests immediately. You can feel them like they are part of your own soul. Their emotions become yours. Their pain is your pain. Their joy is your joy. It is the most sacred connection in our culture, and it cannot be denied or broken once it forms. She shakes her head slowly, dread pooling in her stomach because she already knows where this is going, can feel it in the way her heart synchronizes with his when she pays attention, the way her skin tingles with awareness of exactly where he stands even when she closes her eyes. That is just a myth, right? A romantic story you tell yourselves to explain attraction. It cannot be real because that would mean... She stops, unable to finish the thought. That would mean you are mine. Kel finishes for her, and his voice carries weight of absolute certainty. And I am yours. The mate bond has awakened between us, Alara. As impossible as that should be. You are human. The bond does not form across species. It has never happened in documented history. Humans are not compatible with our magic in that way, and yet I can feel you like I feel my own heartbeat. I know you are terrified right now beneath your brave exterior. I know your pulse is racing and your hands are shaking even though you hide them behind your back. I know that some part of you feels this too, this inexplicable pull that makes no sense but feels more real than anything else in your life. He takes a step toward her, then seems to think better of it and stops. I came here tonight expecting to find a problem to eliminate. Instead, I found you. And now everything I thought I understood about my world has been turned upside down. Alara backs away, needing distance, needing space to process the avalanche of information crashing over her. This cannot be happening. I am just a human woman who talks to wolves. I am nobody, nothing special. You are a king, a legend, someone who commands respect and fear across entire continents. There is no universe where we make sense together, bonded or not. And even if this bond you speak of is real, that does not mean we have to accept it. We are not slaves to fate or magic. We have choices. She is babbling now, words spilling out in a desperate attempt to rebuild the walls she feels crumbling inside her. I do not want this. I do not want to be tied to anyone, especially not someone who could destroy me with a thought. I have worked too hard to build a life where I answer to no one, where I am safe in my solitude. You need to leave. Go back to your castle and your people and forget you ever saw me here. Kale's expression hardens. The vulnerability vanishing behind the mask of the Alpha King once more. You think I want this any more than you do? You think I have been searching for my mate all these years, only to discover she is a fragile human who will die in what amounts to a blink of my lifetime? I am cursed, Alara. Truly cursed. Not metaphorically like your village accused you of being. A witch powerful enough to challenge my authority placed a curse on me 17 years ago, before I killed her for treason. Every full moon, I lose myself completely. The wolf takes over entirely, and I become a mindless beast driven only by hunger and violence. My people have to lock me in silver chains in the deepest dungeon of my castle to prevent me from slaughtering everyone I care about. I have lived with this for nearly 2 decades, searching for a way to break the curse, consulting every magical expert on the continent, and finding nothing. Do you understand what it means that the mate bond has awakened despite that, curse? It means you are not just my destined partner. You are somehow key to my salvation, or my complete destruction, and I do not yet know which. The raw honesty in his words stops her retreat. She sees past the terrifying alpha exterior to the man beneath, the one who has shouldered impossible burdens for years without breaking. What do you mean I am the key? I have no magic except these cursed eyes and dreams I cannot control. How could I possibly help you? I do not know yet, Kale admits. And the confession seems to cost him. But I intend to find out. There are ancient texts in my library, knowledge preserved from times when the world was wilder and magic flowed more freely. If a human can bond with a werewolf alpha, then perhaps the old stories are not as fictional as we believed. Perhaps you are something more than human, or perhaps humans are more than we have given them credit for. Either way, he fixes her with a stare that pins her in place more effectively than physical. Restraints, you are coming with me. I will not force you, will not throw you over my shoulder like a barbarian, but understand that your safety is now my primary concern whether you want it to be or not. Word of a witch in Thornwood has spread. Hunters will come, rogues who do not answer to my authority, humans with silver weapons and hatred in their hearts. Staying here alone is suicide. I have survived 3 years alone, Alara protests, but her voice lacks conviction. She knows he is right. She has heard the increased activity in the forest over recent weeks, the distant sounds of men with dogs and weapons, the occasional glimpse of campfires through the trees where none should exist. The wolves have been more agitated, more protective. She has chosen to ignore the signs because acknowledging them would mean abandoning her sanctuary, the only place she has felt safe since her exile. But safety is an illusion that shatters the moment you stop being vigilant. 3 years, Kale. Repeats. 3 years of borrowed time that just ran out. You can hate me for disrupting your solitude. You can fight the bond between us with every fiber of your being, but you will not die in these woods because you are too stubborn to accept help. He holds out his hand, a gesture that is simultaneously commanding and pleading. Come with me tonight. Let me protect you while we figure out what you are and why fate has tangled our lives together. If you truly want to leave after a week, understanding what you are dealing with, I will not stop you. But give yourself a chance to survive long enough to make that choice. Ilara looks at his outstretched hand, then at the wolves surrounding them, her loyal companions who have never asked anything of her except presents and food. Ghost whines softly, pushing his massive head against her leg, and somehow she knows he is telling her to go, to accept the protection being offered. The wolves have always had better instincts than she does. She takes a shaky breath, and then, before she can overthink it and talk herself out of possibly the most consequential decision of her life, she places her hand in Kyle's. His fingers close around hers with surprising gentleness, warm and solid, and sending sparks racing up her arm that have nothing to do with static electricity. The moment their skin makes full contact, something clicks into place deep in her chest, like a lock finding its key, and she gasps at the intensity of sensation. She feels his satisfaction, his relief, his carefully controlled desire, and beneath it all, a bone-deep loneliness that mirrors her own so perfectly it brings tears to her eyes. I feel you, she whispers, awed and terrified in equal measure. Inside my head, in my heart, everywhere. How is this possible? That is the mate bond, Kale says softly, his thumb brushing over her knuckles in an unconsciously soothing gesture. And it has only just begun. By tomorrow, the connection will be even stronger. Within a week, we will be able to communicate telepathically across distances, share dreams, sense each other's location anywhere on Earth. It is beautiful and terrifying and utterly inescapable. Welcome to my world, Ilara. I promise it will never be boring. He releases her hand, only long enough to remove his jacket, a long black coat lined with what looks like silk, and drapes it around her shoulders. It swallows her smaller frame, still warm from his body heat and carrying his scent more strongly. Then he turns to the wolves, and his voice carries the weight of absolute command when he speaks. Guard her home until she returns. Any human who enters this clearing with ill intent becomes prey. Understood? The wolves respond with a chorus of howls that echo through Thornwood like a promise of violence. Ghost approaches Kale, and in a gesture that shocks Ilara, lowers his head in full submission to the Alpha King. Kale places his hand on the great wolf's head. Good. You have protected her well. Continue to do so, and you will always have my favor. How did you do that? Ilara asks as they begin walking through the forest, Kale keeping her close to his side with a hand at the small of her back. How did you command them so easily? I am the Alpha King, he responds simply. All wolves, wild or shifted, recognize my authority. It is bred into their bones. But what you do, what I witnessed you doing before I revealed myself, that is different. You do not command through dominance. You communicate as an equal. That should not be possible for a human. Which brings us back to the question of what you truly are. He guides her around a fallen log with easy familiarity, clearly able to see perfectly in darkness that leaves her half blind. We will find answers, Ilara. I have resources, knowledge, contacts across the supernatural world. Whatever secret your bloodline carries, we will uncover it. They walk in silence for a while, the forest gradually thinning as they approach what she assumes is the boundary of Thornwood. Ilara's mind races with everything that has happened in the span of less than an hour. Her entire life has been redirected onto a path she never imagined, tied to a man, a king, an alpha who should be impossible, and yet feels more right than anything in her chaotic existence. She glances at him from the corner of her eye, studying his profile in the moonlight. He is beautiful in the way dangerous things are beautiful, sharp and alluring and promising both pleasure and pain in equal measure. What happens when we reach your castle? She finally asks. What will your people think of you bringing a human into your home, into your life? Kale's jaw tightens. They will think what I tell them to think. I rule with authority that has been earned through strength and wisdom. Some will question. Some will object. A few will potentially rebel. But the mate bond is sacred in our culture, more sacred than prejudice or tradition. Once I announce, you as my mate, you will be afforded protection and status that no one can challenge without challenging me directly. He looks down at her, amber eyes glowing softly. That said, it will not be easy. You will face suspicion, hostility, possibly even attempts on your life from those who see a human queen as an abomination. Court politics are vicious, even in the best circumstances. But you survived exile, and 3 years alone in Thornwood. Something tells me you are stronger than you appear. Before she can respond, they break through the tree line into a massive clearing where a vehicle waits. A sleek black SUV that looks wildly out of place against the primitive backdrop of the forest. A man leans against it, tall and broad with copper-red hair and eyes that flash gold in the darkness. When he sees them approach, his eyebrows shoot up toward his hairline. Well, he drawls, straightening. This is unexpected. You went hunting for a witch and came back with a girl who... He sniffs the air. Smells entirely human. Care to explain, Kale? This is Ilara, Kale says shortly. My mate. The words drop like bombs in the quiet night. We are returning to the castle immediately. Send word ahead that I want the North Tower prepared for a guest of highest importance. Also summon Marcus, Thea, and Elder Sienna to my study within the hour. We have much to discuss." The red-headed man's eyes go comically wide. "Your mate? Your destined mate? But she is human, Kale. That is impossible. The bond does not cross-species barriers. You must be mistaken, perhaps confusing intense attraction for the actual mate bond. It has happened before when alphas go too long without finding their true match. They latch onto someone who seems compatible and convince themselves." Kyle growls, a sound so deep and threatening that Alara feels it vibrate through her bones. "Do not presume to tell me what I feel, Dimitri. The bond is real and undeniable. Question me again on this, and you will remember very quickly why I hold the title of Alpha King. Now open the door and keep your opinions to yourself, unless you want to spend the next month guarding the western border with the rogues." Dimitri immediately dips his head in submission, though his eyes remain skeptical when they land on Alara. "As you command, my king." He opens the rear door of the SUV with exaggerated courtesy. "Welcome, my lady. I apologize for my shock. It is not every day one witnesses history being made. Please, make yourself comfortable." Alara hesitates at the open door, suddenly overwhelmed by how fast everything is moving. An hour ago, she was feeding wolves in peaceful solitude. Now she is about to enter a world she knows nothing about, tied to a man through magic she does not understand, facing dangers she cannot predict. Kale seems to sense her panic, because his hand finds hers again, squeezing gently. "You can still say no," he murmurs for her ears alone. "I meant what I said about not forcing you. If you truly want to go back, I will take you back, though I will assign guards to watch over you from a distance. But I hope you will trust me enough to take this leap. I swear on my honor as Alpha that no harm will come to you under my protection." She looks into his eyes and sees truth there, sees the man beneath the monster reputation, and makes her choice. She climbs into the vehicle, and Kyle follows, settling beside her in the leather seats. Dimitri closes the door and moves to the driver's position. As the engine purrs to life, and they begin driving through the night toward a castle she has only heard about in whispered stories, Alara realizes she has just crossed a threshold from which there is no return. Her old life, lonely and safe, is over. Whatever comes next, whether salvation or destruction, she will face it tied to the Alpha King whose amber eyes promise both danger and protection in equal measure, whose touch makes her skin sing and her heart believe in impossible things like fate and destined love. Thank you so much for staying with this story. If you are enjoying the supernatural world of Alara and Kale, please leave a comment below telling me your thoughts. Do you think Alara made the right choice? What do you predict will happen when she reaches the castle? Your engagement helps more than you know. The castle emerges from the darkness, like something from a Gothic fairy tale, all towering spires and ancient stone walls that have weathered centuries of wars and winters. It sprawls across the summit of a mountain, commanding views of the valleys below, where lights from towns twinkle like fallen stars. Alara presses her face to the window, awed despite herself by the sheer magnitude of the structure. This is not just a home, it is a fortress, a statement of power that cannot be challenged. Defensive walls 30 feet high surround the main complex, topped with guards she can see patrolling even at this late hour. They pass through massive iron gates that open at Dimitri's approach, driving up a winding road lined with ancient trees whose branches form a canopy overhead. Everything about this place screams permanence, legacy, the weight of history pressing down on the present. "This is your home?" she asks quietly, and her voice sounds small, even to her own ears. "For the last 70 years. Yes," Kale confirms. "Before that, it belonged to the previous Alpha King, my father, and before him his mother, stretching back 15 generations. The Thornridge line has held the throne for over 400 years, maintaining peace between the packs and establishing the laws that govern supernatural society in this hemisphere. Every stone in those walls represents a battle fought, a challenge answered, a decision that shaped the world you are entering. He watches her face as she takes it all in. I know it must seem overwhelming. Your life has been about simplicity and solitude, and I am dragging you into complexity and constant scrutiny. But you belong here, Alara, whether you believe that yet or not. The mate bond would not have awakened if you were not meant to stand beside me. They pull into a massive courtyard where other vehicles are parked, and servants in uniforms emerge from a side entrance, clearly alerted to their arrival. Dimitri parks and quickly exits to open their door. Kale steps out first, then extends his hand to help Alara down. The moment her feet touch the cobblestones, she feels eyes on her from every direction. The servants stare with barely concealed shock and curiosity. Guards on the walls pause their patrols to watch. Word is already spreading, she realizes. News that the Alpha King has brought home a human woman travels faster than their vehicle did. A woman approaches from the main entrance, elderly but moving with the grace of someone still formidable despite her years. She wears elegant robes in deep purple, and her silver hair is bound in an intricate braid. Her eyes, still bright gold despite her age, assess Alara with an intensity that makes her want to squirm. This must be Elder Sienna, one of the council members Kale mentioned. "My king," the woman says, her voice carrying authority that suggests she is not afraid to speak her mind even to royalty. "I received Dimitri's message. Quite extraordinary news you bring. A human mate is unprecedented. Some would say impossible, yet here she stands." Kale replies evenly. "Alara, this is Elder Sienna, head of my advisory council and keeper of our historical records. If anyone has knowledge that will help us understand your origins, it is her. Sienna, I expect full cooperation in researching this phenomenon. Search every text in our archives, contact every scholar you know, reach out to other supernatural communities if necessary. I want answers." Sienna nods slowly, still studying Alara like a particularly fascinating specimen. "Of course, my king. Though I must ask, have you confirmed the bond through traditional means? Physical marks, shared dreams, the telepathic connection? It would not do to present a false mate to the court." Kale's eyes flashed dangerously. "Are you questioning my judgment, Elder? I am ensuring you have not been deceived." Sienna corrects gently. "There are those with magic strong enough to mimic a mate bond. Rare, but not impossible. If this girl is truly your destined partner, she will bear the mark within 3 days, a symbol that appears on both mates in the same location. Until then, forgive me for maintaining healthy skepticism." "Fair enough," Kale concedes, his posture relaxing slightly. "Trust but verify has always been sound policy." He turns to Alara. "She is right. Within 3 days of the bond awakening, mates develop identical marks on their skin, usually over the heart or on the inner wrist. It is visual proof that cannot be faked. If you are truly mine, the mark will appear. Until then, some will doubt." Alara wraps her arms around herself, suddenly feeling very much like an imposter despite the warmth. Spreading through her chest that she knows belongs to Kale, bleeding through their connection. And what happens if the mark does not appear? What if this is all a mistake? Some fluke of circumstance that mimics your mate bond, but is not actually real? Then you will have spent 3 days in the safest location on the continent before returning to your life. Kale says simply, "But the mark will appear, Alara. I know it with the same certainty I know my own name. Now come. You must be exhausted, and we have much to discuss tomorrow." He guides her through the main entrance into a great hall that takes her breath away. The ceiling soars 40 feet overhead, supported by columns carved with intricate wolf imagery. Tapestries depicting battles and ceremonies hang between windows of stained glass. A massive fireplace dominates one wall, large enough to roast an entire ox. Everything speaks of wealth and power accumulated over generations. Servants bow as they pass, their eyes following Alara, with mixtures of curiosity and concern. She feels utterly out of place in her simple clothing and worn boots, a forest hermit dropped into the center of civilization. They climb a spiraling staircase that seems to go on forever, finally emerging into a corridor lined with portraits of stern-faced individuals who all share Kale's distinctive features. "Your ancestors?" she asks. "Every Alpha King and Queen of the Thornridge line," he confirms. 15 generations of leaders, each adding to our legacy. Someday, if fate is kind, our portrait will hang among them. The thought should terrify her, but instead it fills her with strange longing, a desire to belong to something larger than herself, to matter in ways beyond simple survival. He stops at an ornate door near the end of the corridor and pushes it open, revealing a suite that is larger than any space she has ever called her own. A massive 4-poster bed dominates the room, draped in silk and velvet. Plush furniture is arranged, before another fireplace, already burning with welcoming warmth. Windows look out over the mountains, and a door on one side presumably leads to a bathroom. "This is the North Tower suite," Kale explains. "Reserved for the most honored guests. You will be comfortable here, safe and afforded privacy when you need it. My chambers are directly below yours," he adds with a slight smile. "Close enough to respond if you need anything, but far enough to give you space to adjust." "It is beautiful," Ilara whispers, moving into the room and running her fingers over the soft fabric of a chair. "Too beautiful for someone like me. I do not belong in a place like this, surrounded by luxury I have never known." Kyle follows her inside, closing the door to give them privacy. "You belong wherever I say you belong, and I say you belong here, beside me, in my life." He crosses to her, tilting her chin up so she has to meet his eyes. "I know this is overwhelming. I know you are afraid, though you hide it well, but you are stronger than you realize." Ilara, with the silver eyes who commands wolves and faces down Alpha Kings without flinching. "You have survived alone against odds that would have broken most people. Adjusting to court life will be challenging, but you are equal to it. And you will not be alone. I will be with you every step of the way." "Why?" She asks the question that has been burning in her mind since the clearing. "Why do you care so much? The mate bond might be real, but you barely know. Me, for all you know, I could be a terrible person, cruel or selfish or weak when it matters. Yet you speak as though my success here is vital to you personally, beyond just politics or appearances." Kyle hesitates, and vulnerability flashes across his face again before he carefully controls it. "Because I have been alone for a very long time," he finally admits. "Oh, I am surrounded by people constantly. Advisors, guards, petitioners, pack members who need decisions or guidance or justice. But truly, alone where it matters. In here." He touches his chest over his heart. "I have ruled for 70 years, carried the weight of every decision, every life lost under my watch, every compromise I had to make for the greater good. And through it all, there has been no one who understood, no one I could be vulnerable with, no one who saw beyond the Alpha King to the man underneath. The curse has only made it worse, turning me into a monster one night every month, forcing me to lock myself away like a rabid animal. I have watched my people look at me with fear mixed with their respect, knowing they wonder if someday I will lose control permanently. Then you appeared in that clearing, fearless and beautiful, and utterly unconcerned with my power or reputation, treating me like I was just a man who needed to be put in his place. And when our hands touched, when the bond awakened, I felt something I had forgotten was possible. Hope. So yes, I care deeply about your success here, about you finding a place beside me, because for the first time in decades I am not facing eternity alone. Selfish perhaps, but honest." His words hit her like physical blows, each one resonating with her own experience of isolation, of being alone even in crowds, of building walls to protect herself from more rejection, only to find herself trapped behind them. "I understand," she says quietly. "More than you might expect. I have spent years convincing myself I did not need anyone, that solitude was freedom rather than imprisonment. But some nights the loneliness was so crushing I could barely breathe. The wolves helped, gave me purpose and companionship, but they cannot fill the part of me that aches for human connection, for someone to see me and know me and choose to stay anyway. So I understand the hope, Kyle. I feel it too. and it terrifies me because hope is fragile, and I do not know if I can survive having it shattered again. Then we will protect it together," Kyle murmurs, and before she can overthink it, he leans down and presses his lips to her forehead in a gesture that is tender rather than passionate. His mouth is warm against her skin, and she feels the kiss all the way to her toes. "Sleep, Alara. Tomorrow brings new challenges. But tonight you are safe, you are home, and you are not alone. I will be right downstairs if you need anything. Just call my name and I will hear you through the bond." He pulls back reluctantly, and she immediately misses his warmth. "Wait," she says as he turns toward the door. "How will I know if you are telling the truth about all this? How do I know the bond is not just making me feel things that are not real, manufacturing connection where none would naturally exist? How do I trust what I am feeling?" Kale pauses, looking back at her over his shoulder. "You do not have to trust it yet. Trust is earned over time through actions rather than words or magical connections. But I promise you this, with or without the mate bond, I would still find you fascinating, still want to know everything about you, still feel compelled to protect you. The bond amplifies what is already there, reveals compatibility that might take months to discover organically, but the foundation has to be real, or the bond would never awaken in the first place. So take your time. Get to know me. Let me prove through my actions that what you feel is worth trusting. And if you ultimately decide this life is not for you, I will honor that choice even if it destroys me. To do so, he opens the door. "Good night, Alara. May your dreams be peaceful." Then he is gone, the door closing softly behind him, leaving her alone in the luxurious suite that is meant to be temporary, but feels dangerously like it could become home. She moves to the window and looks out over the castle grounds bathed in moonlight. Somewhere below, Kale is settling into his own chambers, probably dealing with advisors and council members demanding explanations for his shocking decision to bring a human mate into the castle. And here she stands, a former exile who talked to wolves, trying to process how her entire existence has been upended in a single night. She touches her chest, where the mate mark will supposedly appear within 3 days, wondering what form it will take, wondering if it will hurt when it manifests, wondering if she actually wants it to appear, or if some part of her hopes this is all a mistake that will allow her to return to her simpler life. But even as the thought forms, she knows the truth. She does not want to go back. The loneliness she admitted to Kale was real, and for the first time in years, she feels that loneliness beginning to crack under the weight of genuine connection. Dangerous, yes. Terrifying, absolutely. But also necessary in ways she is only beginning to understand. She eventually moves away from the window and begins exploring her new space. The bathroom is magnificent, all marble and gold fixtures with a tub large enough to swim in. She finds fresh clothing laid out on the bed, soft nightdresses in her size, though she has no idea how they knew her measurements. Magic, perhaps, or simply servants experienced in anticipating needs. She strips out of her forest clothing, relishing the feeling of being clean after a hot shower that washes away days of accumulated grime. The nightdress is silk against her skin, luxurious and foreign, and making her feel like someone pretending to be royalty, rather than someone who belongs here. When she finally climbs into the massive bed, sinking into pillows and blankets softer than clouds, exhaustion hits her all at once. The adrenaline that has been sustaining her drains away, leaving her boneless and heavy. She closes her eyes, expecting to lie awake for hours processing everything, but sleep claims her almost immediately. And when she dreams of running through forests on 4 legs with silver eyes that see in darkness, of amber eyes watching her with heat and promise, of a mark appearing over her heart that glows like moonlight and binds her to forever. The dreams feel prophetic in the way her childhood visions always did, less imagination and more glimpses of inevitable future. She does not fight them. Instead, she surrenders to the visions and lets fate carry her toward whatever destiny awaits in the arms of the Alpha King, who found her feeding wolves instead of running from them, who looked at her strangeness and saw not a curse, but a queen. I hope you are enjoying this supernatural romance so far. We are only getting started with Alara and Kale's story, and so much more is coming. Please like this video and subscribe so you do not miss the next chapter. Now, let us continue. Morning arrives with sunlight streaming through the windows, warming her face and pulling her from dreams that felt more real than memory. Alara wakes slowly, disoriented by the softness of the bed and the unfamiliar surroundings before the events of the previous night come, rushing back. The forest clearing, Kale's unexpected arrival, the mate bond, the decision to come to his castle. She sits up carefully, half expecting to find that it was all an elaborate dream, but the luxurious room surrounding her proves otherwise. This is real. She is truly in the Alpha King's castle, tied to him through magic she barely understands, facing a future that terrifies and excites her in equal measure. A soft knock on the door interrupts her spiraling thoughts. "Come in," she calls, pulling the blankets up to cover herself more fully, despite being perfectly decent in the nightdress. The door opens to reveal a young woman, probably close to Alara's own age, with warm brown skin and kind dark eyes. She carries a tray laden with food that smells divine, fresh bread and fruit, and something savory that makes Alara's stomach growl embarrassingly loud. "Good morning, my lady," the woman says with a slight bow. "I am Mara, assigned to assist you during your stay." His Majesty requested that I bring breakfast and help you prepare for the day. He has meetings this morning, but asked that you join him for lunch in his private study at noon. Until then, you are free to explore the castle or rest as you prefer. She sets the tray on a small table near the fireplace. "I hope the room was comfortable and that you slept well." "It was perfect, thank you," Alara says awkwardly, unused to being served. "And you really do not need to call me my lady. Just Alara is fine. I am not accustomed to formality or titles." Mara smiles warmly. "Perhaps not, but you are the Alpha King's mate, whether marked yet or not. That makes you royalty, and the staff will treat you accordingly. Besides," she adds with a conspiratorial whisper, "half the castle is buzzing with gossip about you this morning, the mysterious human woman who captured our king's heart. You are already a legend, Alara, so you might as well get comfortable with the attention." Alara groans, dropping her face into her hands. "That is exactly what I was afraid of. I do not want attention or gossip. I just want to figure out what I am, and why this bond exists, and whether I can actually survive in this world." Mara's expression softens. "For what it is worth, I think you will do just fine." His Majesty does not make decisions lightly, especially regarding his personal life. If he brought you here, if he claims you as his mate, it is because he sees something remarkable in you. Trust that, even when everything else feels uncertain. She moves to a wardrobe and opens it, revealing an array of clothing that definitely was not there last night. The king had these brought up early this morning, all in your size. Casual wear for walking the grounds, more formal attire for court appearances. Everything you might need. He is very thorough when he decides to care for someone. "How does he know my size?" Alara asks, moving to the table and picking at the breakfast. Everything is delicious, better than anything she has, eaten in years of surviving on what she could hunt or forage. "The mate bond," Mara explains. "It connects you on every level, including physical awareness. He knows your measurements, your preferences, probably your favorite foods without you having told him. It is part of the magic, information that flows through the connection whether you actively think about it or not. Some find it invasive at first, but most mates come to appreciate the intimacy of being so thoroughly known by their partner. That is both romantic and terrifying," Alara mutters. The idea that Kale can access information about her without permission feels like a violation of privacy. But she also cannot deny the appeal of being understood so completely. She finishes eating quickly, suddenly eager to leave the confines of the room and explore this castle that might become her home. Mara helps her dress in practical clothing, soft pants and a tunic that allows easy movement, and braids her dark hair back in a style that is both elegant and functional. "Would you like me to show you around?" Mara offers. "The castle is enormous, and it is easy to get lost if you do not know the layout. Or I can provide a map and let you explore on your own if you prefer solitude. A tour would be helpful, Ilara decides. And maybe you can tell me about Kale, about what kind of leader he is, what I should expect from court life here. I know nothing about this world, and I do not want to embarrass him or myself through ignorance. Mara beams. Of course. Let me tell you about the Alpha King, who is far more than the fearsome reputation suggests. They spend the morning wandering through corridors and chambers, each more impressive than the last. Mara points out the great hall where formal court is held, the training grounds where warriors practice, the extensive library that houses thousands of texts on supernatural history and magic, the kitchens where staff prepare meals for hundreds, the gardens that bloom even in late autumn, through some kind of magical cultivation. She introduces Ilara to various staff members, all of whom react with shocked politeness to meeting the king's human mate. Some are welcoming, others openly skeptical, but all are respectful in Mara's presence. As they walk, Mara shares stories about Kale, how he took the throne at a young age when his father was killed in a challenge from a rival Alpha, how he has ruled for 7 decades with wisdom that belies the fact that werewolves his age are usually still considered young, how he personally trains every warrior in his guard to ensure they can protect the people, how he has established laws that protect not just werewolves, but all supernatural creatures under his domain. She speaks of his curse with sadness, explaining how the entire castle knows to prepare for his monthly imprisonment, how heartbreaking it is to hear him scream and rage against the silver chains that bind him. He has searched for a cure for 17 years, Mara says quietly as they stand in the library surrounded by ancient texts. Every witch, every magical practitioner, every scholar he could find has been consulted. Some tried to help, others tried to exploit his desperation, but none succeeded. The curse is tied to his bloodline somehow, punishment for ancient sins his ancestors committed. Breaking it would require magic of equivalent power to what created it, and that kind of power is rare. She looks at Ilara with significant meaning, which is why your appearance, your bond with him, feels like providence. Perhaps you are the answer he has been searching for all along. But I have no power, Ilara insists. I cannot do magic. I just have strange eyes and the ability to communicate with wolves, neither of which seems useful for breaking curses. Elder Sienna believes otherwise. A new voice interjects, and they turn to find the elderly woman from last night approaching through the library stacks. She carries several leather-bound tomes, each looking ancient and delicate. I have spent the night researching, and I have found references to individuals like you, Ilara. They were called beast callers in the old texts, humans born with supernatural blood, diluted through generations, but still carrying traces of ancient magic. The ability to communicate with and command animals, particularly predatory species, is one of several gifts associated with this bloodline. She sets the books on a nearby table. More interestingly, beast callers were known to form bonds with supernatural partners that defied normal compatibility rules. The magic in their blood, though weak, acted as a bridge between species, allowing connections that should not exist. So I am not entirely human? Ilara asks, moving closer to examine the texts. The pages are yellowed with age, covered in handwriting so ornate it is barely legible. Not entirely, no, Sienna confirms, but not supernatural enough to be classified as one of us either. You exist in the space between, which makes you uniquely positioned to interact with both worlds. Your bond with Kale likely awakened because your latent magic recognized his on a fundamental level, saw compatibility where pure human or pure werewolf would find none. As for breaking his curse, she flips through one of the books until she finds the passage she wants. There are references here to beast callers using their blood in purification rituals, cleansing supernatural contamination through sacrifice. It is possible, theoretically, that your blood could neutralize the curse magic in Kyle's system, but the process would be dangerous, potentially fatal. Your magic is weak, and fighting curse magic that powerful could burn through your life force entirely. Absolutely not. Kale's voice cuts through the library like a whip crack, and they all turn to find him standing in the entrance, looking furious. I did not bring Alara here to sacrifice her for my benefit. If breaking the curse requires her death, then I will live with the curse until I find another solution, or until it destroys me entirely. Her life is worth more than my convenience. He strides toward them, and Alara feels the full force of his alpha presence radiating outward. Mara immediately lowers her head in submission. Even Elder Sienna bows respectfully, though her expression remains thoughtful rather than cowed. Kyle ignores them both, focusing entirely on Alara. "You are not using your blood in any ritual," he says firmly. "Not now. Not ever. Not even if you want to. Do you understand me? This is non-negotiable." Alara lifts her chin stubbornly, refusing to be intimidated even by the full weight of his command. "That should be my choice to make, not yours. If I have power that could help you, why would I not use it? What is the point of having magic if I am too afraid to risk myself for something important? Because your life is the most important thing," Kale practically growls. "To me, to this castle, to the future we could build together. I have lived with this curse for 17 years. I can live with it for 17 more if necessary. But I cannot live knowing I let you sacrifice yourself when there might be other options we have not yet explored." He reaches out and cups her face with both hands, forcing her to meet his intense amber gaze. "Promise me you will not attempt anything reckless without consulting me first. Promise me, Alara." She sees genuine fear in his eyes beneath the anger. Fear of loss. Fear of failing to protect what fate has given him. It softens her instinctive rebellion. "I promise I will not do anything without discussing it with you first," she says carefully, choosing her words with precision. "But I will not promise never to use my power if the situation demands it. I spent too many years being powerless, being at the mercy of others' decisions about my life. I will not surrender that autonomy now, not even to you." Kale holds her gaze for a long moment, and she feels the battle raging inside him through their bond, the desire to command her obedience warring with respect for her independence. Finally, he nods slowly. "Fair enough. We discussed before acting. I can live with that compromise." He releases her face but takes her hand instead, linking their fingers. "Come. We have lunch waiting in my study, and I want to talk about what happens next. How we introduce you to the court. What preparations we need to make before the full moon in 2 weeks. 2 weeks until the curse activates again, until she will see firsthand what he becomes when control slips away." The thought sends ice through her veins. But she squeezes his hand and follows him out of the library. Behind them, Elder Sienna watches with knowing eyes, and Alara has the distinct feeling the old woman has plans that neither she nor Kale have considered yet. Plans that might save them or destroy them depending on how carefully they tread in the days ahead. Thank you for continuing this journey with Alara and Kale. Their story is building toward something powerful and dangerous. If you are enjoying it, please let me know in the comments and share this video with anyone who loves supernatural romance. Let us continue to see where fate takes our reluctant lovers. The weeks that follow establish a rhythm that feels both natural and surreal. Alara divides her time between learning court etiquette with Mara's patient guidance, exploring the vast castle grounds, and spending increasingly more time with Kale himself. He proves to be an attentive guide into his world, introducing her to pack members who react with varying degrees of acceptance, teaching her about werewolf politics, and the delicate balance he maintains between multiple factions, sharing meals where they talk for hours about everything from philosophy to favorite childhood memories. She learns that beneath the fearsome Alpha King exterior exists a man with dry wit, fierce loyalty, surprising gentleness, and burdens. He carries so his people do not have to. The mate mark appears on the 3rd day exactly as predicted, manifesting overnight as a silver wolf print directly over Alara's heart, glowing faintly in darkness. When she examines herself in the mirror that morning, she finds Kale standing behind her, having materialized in her room through the bond connection growing stronger daily. He pulls aside his shirt to reveal an identical mark in the same location, confirmation that cannot be disputed. They are bound, truly and permanently, their fates tangled together by forces neither fully understands, but both have stopped fighting. The physical attraction between them intensifies with each passing day. Touches that linger too long, heated glances across crowded rooms, kisses that start chaste and quickly become desperate. But Kale maintains careful restraint, refusing to complete the mate bond physically until Alara is certain, until she has chosen him not just because of magic, but because of genuine desire. She appreciates the consideration even as it frustrates her, because the want pooling low in her belly every time he is near has nothing to do with obligation and everything to do with the way he looks at her like she is the answer to questions he stopped believing had solutions. Court introduction happens at the end of the first week, a formal presentation where Kale stands before hundreds of gathered werewolves and declares Alara his mate and future queen. The reaction is mixed supportive cheers from those loyal to their king, uncertain murmurs from traditionalists uncomfortable with human influence, and stony silence from a faction led by an alpha named Riker, who watches Alara with eyes that promise trouble. Kyle warned her about Riker, an alpha he exiled years ago for attempting to overthrow the throne, but who was recently allowed to return under strict conditions after swearing renewed allegiance. Clearly, that allegiance is superficial at best. She is human. Riker says loudly when given the opportunity to speak, his voice carrying disdain. Weak, fragile, completely unsuited to rule beside our king or bear his heirs. The mate bond must be a mistake, a magical anomaly that will fade once the novelty wears off. We should not be forced to accept this mockery of our sacred traditions simply because our king is lonely and desperate for companionship. The room goes deathly silent. Kale moves with speed that makes Alara gasp, crossing the space between them and lifting Riker off the ground by his throat in one smooth motion. His eyes blaze with alpha fury, and his voice drops to a lethal purr. You will respect your queen, Riker, or I will remind you personally why I hold this throne, and you kneel at my feet. Question the mate bond again, insult Alara's worthiness again, and exile will be the least of your concerns. Do I make myself clear? Riker manages a choked affirmative, and Kale drops him contemptuously before returning to Alara's side. The message to the court is unmistakable. Attack her, and you attack him. Doubt her, and you doubt his judgment. She is under his protection absolutely, and anyone who challenges that will face consequences. The display should terrify her, the casual violence and barely leashed power. But instead she feels only gratitude and a fierce pride that this man, this king, has chosen her. The full moon arrives too quickly despite the time they have spent preparing. Kale becomes increasingly tense as the date approaches, shorter tempered with everyone except Alara, more withdrawn even as their bond pulls them together. The night before the transformation, he takes her to the dungeons beneath the castle, a place of stone and silver where light barely penetrates. A cell waits there, reinforced with bars made of pure silver that will burn any werewolf who touches them. Heavy chains hang from the walls, already prepared. This is where I spend the full moon, Kale explains quietly, his voice echoing. In the oppressive space. Locked away like the monster I become. Chained so I cannot hurt anyone, including myself. My people guard the entrance to ensure no one accidentally wanders close enough to be hurt. It usually lasts 12 hours from moonrise to moonset. And when I wake the next morning, I remember nothing of what happened during the transformation. Only the pain, the rage, the complete loss of control. He looks at her with haunted eyes. I do not want you to see me like that, Alara. I do. Not want your last image of me to be the beast if something goes wrong, and I do not survive until morning. Nothing will go wrong, she insists, taking his hands despite the tremor she feels in them. You have survived this 17 years. You will survive tonight and every full moon after. And I will be here when you wake up, waiting to remind you that you are so much more than the curse that tries to define you. He pulls her close, burying his face in her hair and breathing deeply as though trying to memorize her scent. You have become essential to me in these few weeks, he whispers. More essential than I believed possible. If you decide after seeing what I become that you cannot stay, I will understand. I will honor your choice and let you go, even though it will destroy me. But know that these weeks with you have been the happiest of my life, and I will treasure them regardless of what comes next. She holds him tightly, feeling his heart race against her chest, feeling his fear and self-loathing through their bond. I am not going anywhere, she promises. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever if you will have me. You are mine, Cale Thornridge, curse and all, and I do not abandon what is mine. They stay like that until the moon begins to rise and silver light filters down into the dungeon from high windows. Cale kisses her then, deep and desperate, and full of everything they have not yet said out loud, before pulling away and entering the cell voluntarily, the guards secure, the chains around his wrists and ankles, testing them to ensure they will hold. Alara watches from outside the bars as his body begins to convulse, bones breaking and reforming, skin splitting to reveal fur, his screams of agony echoing through the stone chambers. She forces herself not to look away, to witness what he endures monthly, to understand the full scope of his suffering. The transformation completes in minutes that feel like hours, leaving behind a creature that is more monster than man or wolf. Massive, easily 9 feet tall, with fur black as midnight and eyes that glow red with madness. It throws itself against the chains with strength that makes the walls shake, howling with rage and pain that has no end. Alara sinks to the floor outside the cell, close enough to touch the bars, though the guards try to pull her back. She begins to sing, the same wordless melody she used in the forest clearing, pouring comfort and calm through the mate bond even though she does not know if he can feel it in this state. Hours pass. The beast rages, destroying itself against the chains, blood staining silver as it burns and cuts and holds firm. But gradually, so gradually she almost misses it, the violence lessens. The howls become whimpers. The creature's red eyes begin to flicker between madness and awareness. It turns its massive head toward her, toward the singing, and goes unnaturally still. For just a moment she sees Kyle looking out at her from behind the beast's eyes. Recognition and gratitude and love so profound, it brings tears streaming down her face. Then the madness claims him again. But the moment was real, a breakthrough that should not be possible. When dawn finally breaks and the curse releases its hold, Cale transforms back to human form, collapsing unconscious in the chains. The guards rush in to release him, carrying his battered body upstairs to his chambers where healers wait. Ilara follows, refusing to leave his side as they work to treat the wounds he inflicted on himself. She sits vigil beside his bed, holding his hand and waiting for him to wake, using the bond to pour strength into him, the way he has poured protection into her since the night they met. He wakes near sunset, eyes fluttering open to find her there. "You stayed," he rasps, his voice raw from screaming. "I told you I would," she replies simply. "And Cale, something happened last night. For just a moment, you were aware. You looked at me and you knew me even in beast form. That has never happened before, has it?" He shakes his head slowly, wonder dawning in his expression. "Never. I remember nothing of full moons, just waking up exhausted and wounded. But I remember seeing you last night, hearing your song, feeling you through the bond like an anchor in the chaos. How is that possible? Maybe the mate bond is stronger than the curse," Ilara suggests. "Maybe my presence gives you something to hold on to, a connection to humanity that the curse cannot completely sever. We should test it next month, see if the effect repeats, or if it was a fluke." They spend the following weeks researching and preparing, working with Elder Sienna to understand what happened and how to strengthen the effect. The old woman confirms that mate bonds have been known to counteract curses in rare cases, the power of the connection overriding other magic. If Ilara can maintain the link strongly enough, if she can pour enough of herself through the bond during the transformation, it is theoretically possible that Cale could maintain partial awareness, maybe even partial control. But there are risks, Sienna warns. Connecting so deeply to someone in that state could pull Ilara into the madness with him, could damage her mind, or break her sanity. The curse is vicious and hungry. It will try to consume anything it can reach, including her through the mate bond. She must be strong enough to resist while staying connected, a balance that requires power she may not yet possess. I have to try, Alara insists. I will not watch him suffer monthly knowing there might be a way to help. We are mates, bound together. His pain is my pain, and I will not stand aside when I could make a difference. Kyle tries to argue, tries to forbid her from taking the risk, but she reminds him of their agreement to discuss rather than command. Eventually he concedes, though his reluctance is clear. They establish safeguards, having Elder Sienna prepare protective spells, arranging for guards to be ready to intervene if things go wrong, making sure healers are standing by. When the next full moon arrives, Alara enters the dungeon cell with Kale despite everyone's objections, choosing to be chained beside him rather than watching from outside the bars. This is insanity, Kale tells her even as the guards secure her chains, careful to use regular iron rather than silver that would hurt her human skin. If I hurt you while transformed, I will never forgive myself. Please, Alara. It is not too late to change your mind and wait outside where it is safe. Safe is relative, she replies, reaching over to link her fingers with his despite the chains. And I would rather be beside you in danger than safe and apart. We are doing this together, Kale. No more facing your curse alone. That is what mates do, right? Face impossible things side by side, because separately they would break, but together they are strong enough to endure anything. He looks at her with such profound emotion that words feel inadequate. I love you, he says simply. I know we have not said it, have been afraid to acknowledge the depth of what we feel, but I need you to know before the transformation takes me. I love you, Alara, with everything I am. You have become the center of my world. The reason I believe tomorrow might be better than today. The hope I had stopped believing I deserved. I love you too, she whispers back, tears streaming down her face because this dangerous, powerful, wonderful man has given her everything she never knew she needed. Now let us break this curse together and build the future we deserve. The moon rises. The transformation begins. But this time, Alara does not sing from outside. She sings with her hand pressed to Kale's chest, their mate marks glowing silver through clothing, the bond between them burning brighter than the moon overhead. She feels the curse trying to devour him, feels the madness clawing for purchase, and she fights back with love so fierce it becomes a weapon, with connection so strong it becomes a shield. The beast emerges but cannot fully consume the man. Kyle remains partially aware throughout, his red eyes flickering gold whenever he looks at her, his howls becoming almost words, his violence controlled enough that he does not tear himself apart on the chains. It is not a cure, not yet. The curse still has power, still transforms him, still brings pain. But the absolute loss of control that characterized previous full moons is diminished, held at bay by their bond and her presence. When dawn comes and he transforms back, he is exhausted but aware, able to remember the night clearly for the first time in 17 years. He remembers hearing her voice, feeling her love, using that anchor to hold on to his humanity, even as the beast tried to strip it away. We did it, he breathes, pulling her close despite the chains still binding them both. We actually did it. The curse is still there, but you gave me back myself during the full moon. Do you understand what that means? For 17 years I have been lost one night every month, gone so completely that I might as well be dead. But last night I was here, aware, fighting alongside you instead of drowning alone. You gave me that gift, Alara. You saved me. We saved each other. She corrects gently. You gave me a home, a purpose, a love I stopped believing existed. I just returned the favor. Over the following months, they refine the technique until Kyle can maintain nearly full control during transformations. The curse reduced from devastating to merely painful. The success does not go unnoticed. Word spreads through the supernatural community of the Alpha King, whose human mate somehow counteracts his curse. Some celebrate it as a miracle, proof that the old prejudices about humans and supernatural creatures need to be reconsidered. Others, particularly those loyal to Riker, see it as further evidence that Alara is dangerous, that her influence over their king makes her a threat that must be eliminated. The attack comes on a cold winter night when Kale is away, dealing with a border dispute between packs. Alara is in the library researching Beastcaller history with Elder Sienna, when armed men burst through the doors, humans carrying silver weapons and holy water. Hunters, the kind who have hunted werewolves for centuries, though how they got past the castle defenses is a mystery that will need answering later. They move with military precision, surrounding them before either woman can react. "Alara, the Beastcaller," one of them says, his voice flat and emotionless. "You are coming with us. There are people who have been searching for your bloodline for generations, people willing to pay fortunes for what you represent. You can come peacefully, or we can take you by force. Either way, you are leaving this castle tonight." Elder Sienna steps forward, her old body suddenly radiating power that makes the air crackle. "You have made a grave mistake coming here," she says coldly. "This woman is under the protection of the Alpha King himself. Harm her, and you sign your own death warrants. Leave now, and you might survive to see morning." The hunters laugh. "Your king is miles away, too far to help. And we were promised that if we succeeded in taking her, certain allies within your own ranks would ensure we could leave unmolested. Your precious Alpha King has enemies closer than he realizes, old woman. Now step aside, or we will go through you to get to her." They move forward, and Sienna unleashes magic that sends several flying backward into walls with bone-breaking force. But there are too many, and she is old despite her power. They swarm her, overwhelming her through numbers and silver weapons that neutralize her abilities. Alara screams Kale's name through the mate bond, a psychic cry for help that he will feel no matter the distance, even as hunters grab her arms and begin dragging her toward the exit. But they did not account for the wolves. Alara's wolves, the ones who have been living on the castle grounds ever since she arrived, who followed their queen from Thornwood and took up residence in the forest surrounding the castle. They crash through windows in explosions of glass, massive gray and black bodies interposing themselves between Alara and her attackers. Ghost, her original alpha, leads the charge, his jaws closing around a hunter's arm with enough force to shatter bone. Within seconds, Sabao. Library becomes a battlefield, wolves against hunters in brutal close-quarters combat. Alara breaks free in the chaos, running to Elder Sienna's side and helping the older woman to her feet. "We need to get reinforcements," she gasps. But the entrance is blocked by more hunters pouring in. Too many, far too many for a simple kidnapping attempt. This is a coordinated assault, possibly the beginning of a larger coup. Then Kyle is there, materializing in the doorway with eyes blazing alpha fury and power rolling off him in visible waves. He has shifted mid-run, his hybrid form standing 8 feet tall, all muscle and fangs and controlled violence. The temperature in the room drops as his presence fills it, and the hunters freeze in primal fear because they suddenly realize they have made a fatal error. They challenged the Alpha King in his own home, threatened his mate, and now they will face consequences that no amount of money could make worthwhile. The battle is brief and brutal. Kyle moves through the hunters like a force of nature, ripping weapons from hands and throats from bodies with terrifying efficiency. He is not the mindless beast of curse knights. He is a warrior king defending what is his, controlled but utterly merciless. The few hunters who survive flee into the night, though Kale dispatches guards to track them down and extract information about who sent them. The library is left destroyed, bodies and blood and shattered furniture testament to violence that erupted in seconds. Kale shifts back to human form as soon as the threats are eliminated, striding directly to Alara and pulling her into his arms with enough force to drive the air from her lungs. "When I felt your terror through the bond, when I realized you were under attack," he says against her hair, voice shaking with adrenaline and residual fury. "I have never moved so fast in my life. If I had been even a minute later, if they had succeeded in taking you," He stops, unable to complete the thought. But you were not late, and they did not succeed. Alara soothes, running her hands down his back in calming strokes. The wolves protected me until you arrived. Everything is all right now. Everything is far from all right. Elder Sienna corrects grimly, pressing a hand to her bleeding side, but remaining upright through sheer will. Those hunters knew too much, moved too confidently through the castle. Someone inside provided them access and information. We have a traitor in our midst, my king. Someone who wants Alara gone badly enough to hire human hunters and risk exposing our world to wider attention. Kale's arms tighten around Alara protectively. Riker, he says flatly. It has to be him. He has never accepted Alara's presence, and he has resources and contacts among human hunters from his exile years. This was his opening move, testing our defenses and trying to eliminate the mate bond by eliminating Alara herself. He looks down at her, and she sees raw fear beneath his anger. I almost lost you tonight. That cannot happen again. From now on, you do not go anywhere without guards. The wolves can stay close as well since they clearly have loyalty to you, and I will deal with Riker personally, tonight, before he can organize another attempt. Wait, Alara says, a realization crystallizing in her mind. If Riker is behind this, confronting him directly will start a civil war among your people. Some will side with you automatically, but others who already doubt me will see his actions as justified, as protecting werewolf purity or tradition or whatever excuse they give for bigotry. We need proof, solid evidence that connects him to the attack, before you can move against him without fracturing your kingdom. She is right, Sienna confirms. Act on suspicion alone, and you risk validating his claims that Alara has made you weak, that you prioritize your human mate over your people's well-being. We need to be smart about this. Use his own tactics against him. Let him think. His plan partially succeeded, that we are frightened and on defense. Meanwhile, we investigate quietly, gather evidence, and spring the trap when we have undeniable proof of his treason. Kale clearly hates the idea of waiting, of allowing a threat to remain active when every instinct screams at him to eliminate it immediately. But he nods reluctantly. Fine. We play it carefully. But understand that if he makes another move against Alara, if he so much as looks at her wrong, I will end him, regardless of political consequences. Some things are worth more than a stable kingdom, and she is one of them. The investigation that follows is tense and exhausting, conducted in shadows and whispers while court life continues outwardly normal. They discover that Riker has been building a faction of discontents for months. Werewolves who resent human influence, who believe their king has grown soft, who want to return to more isolationist times when their kind answered to no one. The hunter. Attack was just the opening salvo in a campaign to either eliminate Alara or force Kale to choose between his mate and his throne, betting that either outcome would weaken him enough for Riker to challenge successfully. But Riker underestimated two critical factors. First, Kale's love for Alara is not weakness, but strength, giving him reason to fight harder and more strategically than ever before. Second, Alara herself is not the helpless human they all assumed. Her beast caller abilities grow, stronger daily, her connection with the wolves now extending to other predators in the region, giving her access to information networks Riker never anticipated. She learns of meetings held in secret, of weapons caches hidden outside the castle, of plans to strike during the next full moon when they assume Kale will be weakened by transformation. Armed with this knowledge, Kale springs his trap beautifully. He calls a full court assembly ostensibly to announce new trade agreements with some neighboring territories, packing the Great Hall with hundreds of witnesses. Then, with Alara standing beside him, radiating calm authority, he presents evidence of Riker's treason so comprehensive and undeniable that even the traitor's closest allies cannot refute it. Documents bearing his seal, testimony from hunters captured during the library attack, recordings of conversations where he explicitly plots to kill the king's mate and seize the throne. Riker attempts to fight, tries to rally his faction into open rebellion, but he loses support as the evidence mounts. When Kale finally offers formal challenge, the right of any alpha to combat claims to leadership. Riker has no choice but to accept or be branded coward, in addition to traitor. The fight is held in the courtyard under moonlight, two alphas in hybrid form battling for supremacy, while the entire court watches. Alara forces herself to watch despite every instinct to look away. This is the reality of the world she has chosen, a world where might establishes right, where conflicts are resolved through blood and dominance. She feels every blow Kale takes through their bond, shares his pain and his determination, but she also pours strength into him through that same connection, a constant stream of support and love that shores up his endurance. The battle is fierce and close, both warriors evenly matched in many ways, but Kyle has something Riker lacks. He fights not just for power or pride, but for love, for the future. He has glimpsed with Alara, for the chance to build a better kingdom where mates like them are celebrated rather than condemned. He wins, of course. The outcome was never truly in doubt once he committed fully. Riker falls, defeated but alive, and Kale stands over him with claws extended toward his throat. He could kill, has every right and expectation to do so, but he looks at Alara, sees her nod, and makes a different choice. Exile, he proclaims loudly for all to hear. Permanent exile with a price on your head should you ever enter my lands again. You live because my mate shows mercy, because she understands that strength does not always require death. But your followers will be dealt with according to their level of involvement, and your name will be stricken from pack records, as though you never existed. This is the fate of those who threaten what is mine. Thank you for staying with this epic tale. We are approaching the conclusion, but there are still beautiful moments ahead. Please like and subscribe if you want to see how Alara and Kale's story ends. Let us finish their journey together. In the aftermath of Riker's exile, the castle settles into a new normal. Those who supported the traitor either accept the new order or leave quietly, unwilling to face consequences for their poor judgment. The remaining court members, seeing the strength of the mate bond and how Alara's presence has actually made their king more effective rather than less, begin to warm to her. Genuinely. She will never be fully werewolf, will always be other to some degree, but she has proven herself through trials by fire, and their respect is hard-won but real. Alara's abilities continue to evolve in fascinating ways. She discovers she can communicate not just with wolves, but with most predatory species, building networks of animal scouts that provide intelligence and security more effectively than human or werewolf patrols alone. She establishes sanctuaries for creatures that have been hunted or displaced, creating safe zones that actually strengthen the kingdom's borders. Her leadership style, based on cooperation rather than domination, proves popular with younger pack members who see in her a vision of what their world could become if old prejudices are shed. The curse continues to diminish as the mate bond strengthens. By their first anniversary, Kyle can maintain nearly full human consciousness during full moons, transforming but retaining his mind and control. It is not a perfect cure. He still experiences pain, still looks monstrous in those hours. But he is himself throughout, able to communicate with Alara, able to function rather than merely survive. Elder Sienna theorizes that given another year or two, the curse might break entirely, burned away by the power of their connection. They are married in a ceremony that blends werewolf tradition with human customs Alara creates, a symbolic joining of their two worlds witnessed by thousands. She wears silver and white, colors of the moon and purity, and when Kale places the mating bite on her neck during the ritual, marking her as his permanently, she gives him one in return, a human bite that will scar beautifully and mark him as hers. The gesture shocks the traditional elements of the court, but Kale laughs with genuine joy, declaring that his queen may be human, but she is every bit as fierce as any werewolf, and he is proud to bear her mark as she bears his. Their first child, a daughter, is born, 2 years into their marriage. She is a miracle, a hybrid that should not exist according to every biological law, but love has a way of rewriting rules that seem absolute. The baby has Alara's silver eyes and Kale's dark hair, and when she cries, wolves throughout the territory howl in greeting to their new princess. She represents possibility, proof that the future need not look like the past, that change and growth are not threats, but opportunities. On a cool autumn evening, Alara stands on the balcony of their shared chambers, looking out over the forest that has become her home in ways Thornwood never truly was. Kyle wraps his arms around her from behind, pulling her against his chest and resting his chin on her shoulder. Their daughter sleeps peacefully in her cradle nearby, guarded by Ghost, who has become her devoted protector. "Do you ever regret it?" Kyle asks quietly. "Coming with me that night in the clearing? Leaving your solitary life for all this chaos and complexity?" Ilara considers the question seriously, looking back at the woman she was before the night the Alpha King found her feeding wolves instead of running from them. That woman was surviving, but not truly living. Isolated by choice, but aching with loneliness she refused to acknowledge. "Never," she finally says. "Not for a single moment. You gave me a home, Kyle. Not just this castle, but here." She presses his hand to her heart. "You saw me when I had convinced myself I was invisible. You fought for me when I had forgotten how to fight for myself. You loved me when I believed I was unlovable. How could I regret finding everything I never knew I needed?" He turns her in his arms, amber eyes glowing softly in the dimming light. "I am the one who should be grateful," he says. "You broke my curse, saved my kingdom, gave me a daughter I never dared hope for. But more than that, you gave me yourself, every beautiful and fierce and stubborn part of you. You challenged me to be better, to lead with wisdom instead of just strength, to build bridges instead of walls. Everything I am now, everything we have built together, exists because you were brave enough to trust me with your heart, despite every reason not to. We saved each other," Alara says, echoing words from years ago that remain true. "Neither of us was whole before, but together we are everything we need to be." They stand in comfortable silence, watching the moon rise over their kingdom, over forests full of wolves who howl greetings to Fu, their queen, over a future bright with possibility. Somewhere in Thornwood, in the clearing where they first met, new growth pushes through old earth, life insisting on continuing despite harsh winters and dangerous nights. It is a metaphor too perfect to ignore, a reminder that even the most unlikely seeds can flourish when planted in the right soil, tended with love, and given time to grow into something beautiful. Alara thinks of the girl she was, cast out and cursed and convinced she would always be alone. She thinks of the woman she has become, queen and mate and mother, and so much more. The journey between those two versions of herself was filled with danger and doubt, but every step was worth it to arrive here, in this moment, in these arms, looking toward a future she helped create through courage and compassion. The wolves howl again, a chorus that swells and echoes through the valleys, and she knows they are singing for her, for their unconventional queen who loved them first and earned a kingdom second. She sings back, that wordless melody that started everything, and Kale joins her with his deeper voice harmonizing perfectly. Their daughter stirs in her sleep, smiling as though she hears music in her dreams. Ghost raises his head and adds his voice to theirs. And for a perfect crystalline moment, everything is exactly as it should be. In the years that follow, their legend only grows. The Alpha King and his beast caller queen, who proved that love transcends species, that strength comes in unexpected forms, that curses can be broken by connection rather than violence. They ruled together for decades, establishing precedents that reshape supernatural society, opening doors that were previously barred, creating space for others to follow unconventional paths to happiness. Their daughter grows strong and wise, inheriting the best qualities of both parents, eventually taking the throne herself when her parents finally step back to enjoy retirement. But that is a story for another time. This story ends where it began, in a clearing deep in Thornwood, where wolves gather under moonlight, and a woman with silver eyes stands unafraid among them. Except this time, she is not alone. The Alpha King stands beside her, his hand linked with hers, their mate marks glowing in perfect synchronization. They have come full circle, returning to the place where fate first tangled their lives together, where the impossible became inevitable. She was never meant to fear the wolves, Kale says softly, speaking to the forest, to the night, to destiny itself. She was always meant to lead them, to be their voice, their bridge to worlds they could not reach alone. And I was meant to find her here, to recognize in her everything I had been searching for without knowing. The curse that plagued me for 17 years was not punishment but preparation, ensuring I would be worthy when she finally appeared, ensuring I would understand that true strength is not domination, but partnership. Alara leans into him, feeling the rightness of it all, the sense that every hardship and lonely night led to this, to them, to a love that rewrites rules and redefines possible. The wolves surround them in protective circles, dozens of glowing eyes reflecting moonlight and devotion. Ghost approaches, now graying around the muzzle but still powerful, and presses his massive head against her hand one more time. She scratches behind his ears the way she has 1,000 times, and he rumbles contentment before returning to his pack. "Thank you," she whispers to the forest, to the magic that brought them together, to fate that saw farther than she could. "Thank you for this life, this love, this miracle of finding home in the last place I expected." The moon sails overhead, full and bright and eternal, witness to their story from beginning to this ending that is really just another beginning. The Alpha King and his queen, forever bound, forever partners, forever. Proof that when you stop running from what terrifies you and instead face it with courage, you might discover that the wolves were never the danger. The real danger was spending a lifetime alone because you were too afraid to believe in magic, in fate, in love that defies every logical expectation. And they lived, not happily ever after in the fairy tale sense, because real life is more complicated than that, but they lived fully, deeply, surrounded by love and purpose, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing they had found what most spend entire lifetimes searching for. They had found each other, and that made every trial, every danger, every moment of doubt worthwhile. The Alpha King who needed to be seen as a man rather than a monster, and the woman who needed to be seen at all, who needed to matter beyond her strangeness. Together they were more than the sum of their parts, more than alpha and human, more than king and queen. They were simply Kale and Alara, mates in every sense of the word, partners walking through eternity side by side. The end. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through Alara and Kale's love story. If you enjoyed this supernatural romance, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more immersive tales of love, magic, and destiny. Let me know in the comments what other supernatural stories you would like to hear, and I will see you in the next adventure. Until then, may you find your own impossible love and have the courage to embrace it when it appears.